Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
Sherrone Moore was fired as Michigan's football coach and arraigned on multiple charges last week. What to make of his downfall and who might replace him as Michigan's next coach. Plus, another impressive win for Michigan basketball. We discuss those topics and more coming up on Wolverine Confidential. All right, guys, good to be with you here Monday morning, December 15th. And man, it's the Chiron Moore news. It seems like it's still ongoing, but also now already feels like it's far in the past after a weekend where things calmed down a little bit. Our emergency podcast last Wednesday night was after he'd been fired, and we knew some details of what went on after he got fired. But now we know a lot more because he actually, appeared in court, not physically. He was through a, video conference link as he was still at the Washtenaw County Jail at the time. And I just, the one word that just comes to mind for me is surreal. Surreal to cover this, to watch him appear on that video feed, just the way he looked, the way he sounded, obviously what he was wearing, and to hear what he had done was just wild, given that, we covered this guy for 2 years and had spoken to him just a couple days before all of this went down. I know you can never fully truly know a person, especially us. We weren't hanging out with him outside of the work, the press conferences and games and stuff. But still, it was just jarring to see.
Yeah, it's someone we've dealt with now for many years. He's been on the staff since 2018. I remember having a sit-down interview with him shortly after he got hired here. We talked about this, right? Like, he was considered a coach, an up-and-coming coach. Michigan viewed him as a star in the making. Biff Poggi had said so. Jim Harbaugh had said so. Jim Harbaugh had suggested him being their next head coach, and sure enough, Michigan made him that. But the downfall, it was so swift. It was so quick. As you said, he had a white jail jumpsuit on. It looked like he had some bracelet of sorts around his wrist. I don't know if that was from the hospital or just that's a jail thing, but it was jarring to see that video of him, the photos of him. He looked ejected. He looked like a broken man. He looked like a guy who had probably done some soul searching. You would hope he would. But it was, I don't know, it was a wild scene Friday. It was something that, and I said this to you guys, as we were, discussing this, our plan of attack that last week, but like, we just seen him Monday in the press conference and he was joking with, in fact, I think Zook was the one that gave him crap about not wearing the workman jacket during the press conference. And then Friday he's wearing a jail outfit. It was just wild.
Yeah, no, that's I feel exactly how you guys feel too. It's still hard to grasp just how quickly things snowballed out of control and got to this point. And it's you feel for the Chiron's family and just everything, and his daughters and his wife. It's just it's tough because his life, and I'm sure his family's life, is kind of unraveling in real time here, and it just happened so abruptly. It's hard to fully grasp still, and yeah, just truly shocking and surreal, like you guys said.
I know I usually serve as kind of air traffic controller here, so I'll let you guys decide. We obviously want to be talking about the future of this Michigan football program, but is there anything lingering, that we learned, at the end of last week or just since our last podcast, that we want listeners to know about Chiron Moore or this athletic department in general?
Well, yeah, we got more clarity on the situation at hand. Wednesday night when we last recorded, police were saying that they were called to that home and that residence in Pittsfield Township for an assault. That, based on what we learned Friday from the police department, that necessarily didn't transpire. What the police were saying is Sherrone did enter the victim's residence through an unlocked door, an open door. He picked up 2 butter knives and a pair of scissors and then threatened to harm himself. At this point, at least, police are not pointing to any evidence proving that an assault took place. This sounds like this was pretty much strictly all on Chiron. He was charged with three charges: home invasion, third-degree home invasion, stalking, and then entering a home without breaking. One's a felony, 2 are misdemeanor counts. He could face up to, I think, 5 or 6 years in prison if he's found guilty on all 3. He was released from jail on Friday, on $25,000 cash surety bond. He is wearing a GPS tether so that he doesn't flee. He was ordered not to have contact with the victim, and then he's set for a back in court January 22nd. So that's where things stand with him. And now, if you're Michigan, it was a wild situation last week. You had to deal with all this, not only the firing but the aftermath. But now Michigan has to turn the page here with a coaching search, and that's where things stand right now. It's still early in the process, but they got to make a hire, and it's probably going to come here in the next couple of weeks, would be my guess.
Yeah, as far as going back to the original, like the arrest and the alleged assault and whatnot too, and there was a ton of misinformation out there, rumors circulating. It's he's breaking down doors and threatening her and all this stuff, and it just made it sound like it was a huge scene there. And so I ended up going over to the to the where it allegedly took place and kind of knocked on some doors and see if anyone heard anything, and spoke to a neighbor that is directly really close to where the victim lives. And I mean, she actually ended up calling the clubhouse shortly after the she was interviewed by police, like asking if she heard anything because she was home and she didn't hear anything. So you would think if it was a huge scene, people would have heard something around her, and that wasn't the case. And I ended up speaking with the neighbor as well. She's like, yeah, no, I found out about everything online, and it was just truly surreal about, like, holy crap, this happened like right by where I live type of thing too. So but yeah, now it's kind of moving on. As far as Michigan, they have to make a hire here, but there's still, like, there's an ongoing investigation into the whole athletic department too. So that might throw a wrinkle into the whole coaching search too, that I'm sure we'll get into here.
Yeah, we're already again, the whole, assault is typically paired with battery, right? Assault and battery, and maybe it's different in different states, but assault is usually more about the threat, and the battery, the actual physical violence. So yeah, it certainly, you guys mentioned what he was eventually charged with. And he'll have his day in court to contest those charges. But yeah, we know this for sure. He's out as Michigan's coach, and they need to find a new one. It's December 15th right now. So, as we talked about, like, the carousel had stopped spinning. I'm not saying you can't go get a guy that just inked a new contract, because we've seen that happen before. But the other factors in play here, as Ryan alluded to, is that they have an AD who's now in hot water, and they have an interim president who has no interest in retaining the job, like, full time. So, like, what do you do first if you're Michigan? Like, ideally, you'd want a president in place to then get an athletic director in place to then hire a coach, but a coach might be the most important pressing thing, as far as the one where the timetable matters the most. It's kind of a mess.
That's a good way to describe it, because yeah, as ideally you start from the top and go down, right? You want a president in place who can choose to hire an athletic director, and you want an athletic director who can kind of have their pick of their coach. Because as we've seen in the past, when new athletic directors come into schools, they typically want their guy, and that may not be the case here. Athletic director Ward Emanuel remains on the job. He remains under contract through 2030. And as of now, there's been no sign of a departure or a dismissal there. Now, Michigan has retained an outside third party law firm to investigate its athletic department. Jenner and Block, they were actually already investigating Sherrone Moore, apparently behind the scenes in the athletic department. They had been for several months now. So now their focus has turned to at the athletic department, and kind of who knew what, the culture there, and whether things need to change. So that the investigation in and of itself is important. I don't know the length. I don't know how long this thing is going to go. It could go a very long time for all we know. We don't know what type of evidence or what they're going to learn. But this is clearly a move by the university to try and clean things up in the athletic department. I don't know I don't know what's going to come from this, if anything. But it could result in some meaningful changes, and that could mean athletic director, that could mean other staff inside the department. We don't know. But yeah, it's messy. If you're a coach on the outside looking at Michigan, ideally this is a great job. It's a destination role. It's a spot you can go and have success in right away. But if you don't know who's going to be in charge, if you don't know who your boss is going to be, that to me would be a little concerning.
And another fact too is just the optics thing of, if whoever they hire like leaves a program this late in the season too, or in the cycle too. That's not a they don't want to be made out as the bad guy too. Oh, you're leaving us to go to a Michigan program that looks like it's in shambles right now. Like that's that you probably get a lot of negative press too. And I mean, wherever these coaches are, they're still probably they're making good money right now. They're typically in good situations if you're looking at some of the top candidates that are rumored to be out there. So it's a tough situation for Michigan, and like Aaron said, with all the investigation going on into the athletic department, I don't even think they need an investigation. Like, we could tell you they probably need to make changes in the athletic department. I mean, look how many scandals and things we've covered in the last 5 years or so. It hasn't been good.
Absolutely, and I'm I'm not sure I'd hire the same firm to do this, but there's clearly a relationship there. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like, do you think there's a chance they sort of? I've heard some people suggest this. They kind of punt on this season, to use a football term, roll with Biff, try to retain as many assistants as possible for continuity, for the recruiting class, for retention of the current roster, and hope to have maybe another season kind of like this, and then boom, you've got a full you could do a thorough search, and hopefully have then the rest of these key figures in place. Is it, you think that's a possibility Michigan does that?
It's possible, and you don't forget you'd kind of have first crack, right, at the next coaching carousel cycle. You'd have kind of the pick of the litter. Not that they're Michigan; they can still, I think, go out today and try and convince someone if they really like them. But yeah, it's going to come back to, I think, where the candidates this time around are when with their take on Michigan, and where Michigan feels comfortable moving forward. It's certainly possible. Biff Poggi is in place right now as the interim guy. He's familiar with the program. By all accounts, the players and staff and coaches love him. So I could see a situation where he is kind of the interim guy, maybe for a year, and rides us out and tries to sustain things, stabilize things. Um, is he a long term answer? No, I don't. I just don't think that's a serious move. So I don't know. I could see them doing that. I don't think they will, but it would be intriguing to watch play out.
Yeah, I will say that I mean Biff does have a lot of respect with from people in the program and even like the parents of players. I was texting with a couple last week, just kind of trying to get the sense of like what their thoughts are. So I don't like I heard, yeah, they believe in Biff and really respect Biff, and some people even want him to be the full time head coach, which, like Aaron said, I don't think it's very realistic. But yeah, maybe in an interim basis for a year or so. But it's again, if it's tough for a player and recruit under like a 1 year prove it deal type of thing too, because people want stability. But it's if there's no candidates out there willing to accept your terms or come to your program at a decent price, or it might be the last resort and something they might have to do.
So yeah, as far as some of these names, I mean, there's a couple of KDs, Kalen Deboer and Kenny Dillingham, both seem out. I mean, I know that saying like I'm happy here is like probably just the last thing you say before you sign a contract with that new school. But like, I think it's a little different to truly come out and say like, I have no interest in other jobs, or hey, that's going to be a nice job for somebody, but probably not me. So it seems like both those guys, DeBoer at Alabama, Dillingham at Arizona State, are out of the running for Michigan. Is that safe to say?
I question Dillingham. I did watch his press conference the other day. I think it was Saturday afternoon out there in Tempe. He fielded several questions about Michigan and his contract status at Arizona State and the like. And the way he talked, he obviously expressed his love and desire for Arizona. He grew up there, went to high school there. He played at Arizona State. He attended there. He is an Arizona guy. He talked about his sister living on the same block as him, his parents there. But to me, he didn't rule it out, and I think that's where things are at this point with these coaches. That while maybe they haven't spoken to Michigan directly, they fielded interest from the agents, and to me, he came across as a guy who's going to listen at the very least. DeBoer maybe a little less. He did put out that statement on Sunday saying he has no interest in speaking to other schools or taking another job. But I gotta wonder what say Alabama does lose to Oklahoma on Friday night, what things will be like after that. And look, there have been reports out of both schools, Arizona State and Alabama, that contract extensions and pay raises are on the table for both, and neither one have signed it yet. So in this world where coach speak doesn't really hold up a whole lot, never say never. So I'm not really willing to rule out either one of those. And then I think the name to watch this week will be Jed Fish. Washington's season just ended over the weekend. He's obviously a name that came up early, and the ties make sense. We'll see where things go with him, but I got to think he might be the hot name this week, so to speak.
Yeah, and for me, regarding Deboer, I mean, I think a lot might hinge on the result of that playoff game too, because you could say anything. You expect him to say that before your team is entering a huge playoff game because you don't want it to be a distraction. So of course he's going to come out and say that too, because yeah, I'm focused on the team that I have a chance to win a national championship this year. I'm going to try, but if things go south in a hurry, then we know how the Alabama fan base can be. Maybe he might reconsider if they lose. Now, if they win, that probably takes them out of the running, I would guess. But like Aaron said, it's hard to rule out anything in this day and age in college football and the coaching carousel because, yeah, I mean, look, I didn't expect Lane Kiffin to leave how he did with his team in the playoff too. So anything can happen.
Just remember too, coaches lie all the time, especially when it comes to contracts and moving and new deals. They may say one thing one day, and the next day they sign with someone else. So I'm not ready to rule out either Dillingham or DeBoer at this point.
Jed Fish, the Washington won their bowl game. He's 32-33 as a head coach over, call it's 5 seasons, but he's got a 1-1 record with UCLA too on an interim basis. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's going to get people super excited. Like, another coach that, Michigan. I guess Michigan is 1-1 against him since he's been at Washington. So I'm not sure. And then, but I do want to say, like, Jesse Minner, the name that we kind of all mentioned on the last podcast. The more I've thought about him, first of all, I think it's more of a pipe dream because why are you leaving the NFL? You're on track to potentially become a head coach to come to this mess that is college sports and especially Michigan. But the more I also think that maybe Michigan needs to just get away from anyone who has Harbaugh connections. And I mean, I don't mean that as a joke. I just think it's maybe time to get outside of that family, kind of that Michigan man model, both for the head coach and if they decide to make a move in the AD chair as well with that hire.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it needs to happen. Fish, that would effectively disqualify Fish as well because he technically worked for Harbaugh for a couple of years here in Ann Arbor. But I agree with you. I do think they need to move someone that really doesn't have a whole lot of ties here, someone who can kind of come in and start fresh and start with a clean slate and put Michigan back, get them back rolling here. And yeah, I agree. I don't know where the athletic director situation sits. I laid out all the facts for you guys for Ward Emanuel, where his contract situation sits in the investigation. Michigan's got some, I think, soul searching to do. Not only Sherrone Moore, but I think the university in and of itself of where they want to move and where they want things to look moving forward. Because I'll be quite frank, what's been going on now the last couple of years just hasn't worked. So I think it's time to again, as you said, move outside the family and find someone with no ties to the university.
I will say I wouldn't call Fish a Harbaugh guy. I know he had those 2 seasons where he worked here, but he had established himself long before that. I saw he worked for the Baltimore Ravens, but I double checked that was under a different regime. Actually, John Harbaugh did not retain him, so I'd say he would be okay as far as not checking that box. But yeah, I don't know, Ryan. What do you think? Where do you think they should go in this search?
No, I mean, I like the idea of getting a big name that doesn't have previous Michigan ties. It's just a matter of if they can do that or not. I mean, it sounds like they have a lot as far as compensation wise and NIL wise, a lot to offer a Deboer or Dillingham too. But it's just yeah, it's just a matter of if they can lure them out of their current positions. I think those would both be home run hires for Michigan. It's just a matter of if they can actually pull that off and get pen to paper is the question.
I would view DeBoer as, given this crop of candidates and where Michigan sits at this point in the search, I would call DeBoer the home run hire at this point. If they can get him, that would probably be the best ideal situation, just given his track record of success, his development of quarterbacks. et cetera, et cetera. He knows what it takes to win big games, and I think he'd be the best fit. But again, it's gonna come down to whether he's open to leaving Alabama and coming here at this point. There have been talk of him being interested in the Michigan job before they named Sherrone the permanent head coach in 2024. So that would signal to me that there is genuine interest in Deboer coaching at Michigan. It's just a matter of whether this is the right time or not. And remember, he's only in the second year at Alabama, and that's a destination job too. Do you want to leave a destination job for quote unquote another destination job, especially given all the the fireworks and everything that's going on at Michigan here? To me, Fish is he's the uninspiring option. I think he'd be maybe the safe option at this point, someone that you could trust to come in here and coach a team and lead a team and have a modicum of success. But can he get you over the top? Can he get you back into the national title picture? I don't know. And Dillingham to me is kind of like uh, like he's intriguing. He's had some success at Arizona State, but he's only a third year head coach himself. 35 years old, yeah, and he's still learning on the fly too. And look, he's doing it in a familiar spot, Arizona State, as we said. He's he grew up there. He knows the school very well. The story's awesome. The support's been great there. But can he duplicate that at Michigan for over a long term stretch? That would be my question. So I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if maybe later in the week we hear some type of coordinator out of the NFL that Michigan's looking at as well. That could be an option as well. You guys mentioned, Jesse Minter. That would obviously make sense. But again, it's going to go back to whether Michigan wants to dip back into that Jim Harbaugh, pool or not. So I don't know. I don't expect, any hire anytime soon. They have hired an outside executive search firm, Turnkey ZRG, led by Len Parna, the U of M alum. Their company is well known for doing searches such as these. My understanding is they're compiling a list of candidates that are interested in the Michigan job that would be willing to take it, and then they're going to present it to Michigan. Now the question becomes who's making that hire. Is it going to be Turnkey just suggesting one? Will it be the Michigan Board of Regents making a decision? Will it be more manual picking? I don't know at this point. So that will be something to watch here over the next week.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
One more note on Deboer. I mean, we saw how good of a coach he could be by leading Washington to the national championship game. But another thing too, what we saw when he got to Alabama with more resources, how well he can recruit too. I mean, Alabama has the second ranked recruiting class in the country right now. I mean, 4 or 5 stars, 10 4 stars, like just an incredibly talented recruiting class coming in for next year too. So it's like, if you can get him, we know he's a good coach and he has some recruiting chops too. I mean, I think that could be a home run hire too, and coaching in a region that he's probably a little bit more comfortable in compared to the South. So if there's no limit to resources and contracts, I mean, that's who I would be going to get right now.
Yeah, we have obviously, a track record of the Sherrone Moore's hires, and it's just been interesting. Like, you look at Chiron. Okay, I mean, that was, his hands were kind of tied to a certain extent. It was so late in the game. It was much later than this. Michigan went to the national championship. Jim Harbaugh didn't leave till another week, so you're late January. All the players wanted Chiron. It was just, that was almost the punt. It's like, all right, we'll just promote this guy from within, and he had handled the job well. As head coach, he sadly had several chances to do so because of what else was going on with the program. So fine. And then basketball, you look at, again, a little bit late in the game when John Beilein leaves in May. Like, all right, basketball's a little different than football, but still, it was late. The carousel had stopped spinning that year for the most part. He goes with Juwan. Ultimately turns out to be a bad choice, but so far it looks like he's redeemed himself with Dusty May. Again, at this point in the Juwan Howard era, he was en route to be the national coach of the year and guide Michigan to a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament in his second year. So that's where Dusty is now. I'm not saying that Dusty is going to now then, succumb to the perils that Juwan Howard did, but I'm just saying it's still a little too early to judge. Also say it was like the obvious no-brainer number one candidate. Not going to knock Ward for making that move, but like anyone could have done that one. Then and then Hockey Zook. I mean, what do you think? Did he kind of he goes and gets Mel Pearson again? That seemed like the obvious choice. You know, the longtime former assistant who had success as a head coach elsewhere. He did hire Pearson, right? I'm pretty sure that was under his. Yeah.
Yep. First major hire. Yeah.
And again, ultimately, didn't really work out. And then similar thing to Sherrone as far as then his replacement, it was just kind of the obvious call, right? So I don't know. How do you kind of view Ward's track record here?
No, yeah, that's great points there. And I think the Mel Pearson hire made so much sense at the time. And yeah, I mean, recruiting wise, success wise, there was a lot of good years on the ice for Pearson. It just happened, yeah, that the on off ice stuff that kind of led to his firing too. And again, it was kind of late in the game, and you figure, all right, we'll have. That's why they put an interim tag too on Naruto for that 1 year, and he had such a successful season, you kind of had to give him the full-time job, because it wouldn't look good if you make the Frozen Four and we're a top team, and then they decide to go somewhere else. So that was kind of a layup there. And yeah, Michigan hockey didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, but I mean, they're the number one team in the country again now, with loaded with talent on the roster. So I think that's looking like a pretty good hire. But again, it was kind of the logical choice there. I think, I don't want to say lazy, but it's like, oh, I don't know if why would I go out and try and find a replacement if I really don't have to, and risk, you know, a bad hire, and putting that on my resume too.
I will say this: if I'm a football coach looking at the Michigan job and considering this position, I would want to know what the hierarchy above me is going to look like. Right? Is Ward Emanuel going to be here? Are they looking at getting a new athletic director? What's the president situation? Who is overseeing me? What's the input going to be from the board of regents? Just a lot of questions here. That if you're in a comfortable situation like a Dillingham is at Arizona State, like a Fish is at Washington, do you want to leave those stable environments where you're kind of the top dog, you're having success, you're doing great things, to come to Michigan where things don't look so great right now, and with the right set of circumstances, you could potentially flame out in a couple of years. So that's gonna. If I'm a coach, if I'm Dillingham, if I'm Fish, even if I'm Deboer, I would want answers to those questions, because to me, if I was in their shoes, I would be considerably worried, concerned, and I'd want some clarity on all that.
No major movement on the Michigan football roster. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Some recruiting shakeups, but haven't lost like the top guys. No one from the current roster that we know of. The potential returners have entered the transfer portal because of this, as far as we know. But that could change, of course, in these next few weeks.
Yeah, no, especially with the recent recruits too, because they're so recently signed. It doesn't take much for them to request out of their financial aid agreement, and go elsewhere. I mean, we already saw 4-star tight end Matt Ludwig basically decommit or get out of his paperwork, and is now flipped to Texas Tech. Bear McWhorter, 3-star offensive lineman, has also reopened his recruitment, and I think a lot now are just in wait and see mode. It will depend a lot on who they bring in, and what kind of promises are made to them. And so it's time is of the essence right now for Michigan, because I mean, the longer this goes on, I mean, these opportunities might close up for these recruits to go elsewhere too. So if they're put in backed into a corner, all right, you either come to us now, or not, like, you then like, all right, well, Michigan still hasn't hired a coach, I'm just going to leave and go somewhere with a more stable spot right now too. So it will be very fascinating to see what happens in that regard.
And there's also a question of what the rest of the coaching staff is going to look like. A lot of these assistants have clauses in their contract allowing them to get out of their deal if the coach is fired for cause or no cause. So it's very possible you see some of these assistants, if they can land jobs elsewhere next year, they make a leave. So there's a lot of question marks here moving forward with the staff and what everything looks like. So it's in limbo right now. I think the sooner the better for Michigan in terms of making a hire or making a decision here. But at the same time, you don't want to move too quickly to where you get it wrong, or you put yourself back here. So I don't know, critical next couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah. Balancing short term and long term here. It's just it's a lot of moving pieces within the Michigan Athletic Department. We'll be covering it all at mlive.com/Wolverines. Let's talk a little hoops. Dusty May said he hoped his team could be, serve some as some hope, maybe a distraction for Michigan basketball fans. And, for a couple hours on Saturday night, maybe they did that with a 101-83 win at Maryland. I mean, guys, Maryland scored 50 points in the first half. They had a 5'10" point guard just go bananas and then just couldn't miss. The team in general made 14 threes on 27 attempts for the game. And Michigan won by 18 points. Like it's just bonkers. Like this was a shot. They're playing at home. They get the hot shooting, and the crowd gets into it, and Michigan still just again just grinds it. Just finds a way to wear down the opponent. And I think again playing 9 guys helps with that. Having the best player on the court for most games helps with that. Yaxel Lendeborg was that guy on Saturday, even though, again, David Coit went off for 31. Yaxel nearly, neutralized him with 29 of his own, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 blocks, 2 steals. Again, we talked about this previously. Only 2 players in the country last year led their team in all 5 major statistical categories. Yaxel was one of those guys last year, and basically said he went into UAB mode in this game where, he started talking and he realized he was probably throwing his teammates from last year under the bus a little bit. So he's like, I mean, they were good, but like I had to kind of do everything at times. So, he did that a little bit in this game. But, the great thing is when Maryland adjusted and started sending extra, bodies at him, he's more than a willing passer. So, Michigan makes 12 threes of its own, shoots a high percentage from the foul line and everywhere else on the court, and, kind of shuts off Maryland's water late to win this game.
Yeah, and this is their first 10-0 start since when? I mean, this is kind of a rare occurrence for them, isn't it?
Yeah, they went 11-0 in we were talking about Juwan's second year earlier, that kind of weird COVID season. They were 11-0 to start that year. Got to 18-1. It's kind of like this year. They were just near the top of the rankings at all times. John Beeline's last year was their best start ever. That was 17-0. But yeah, this is impressive.
I'm looking at the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
8-day break before LaSalle on Sunday. Then I
Yep.
got McNeese December 29th, another 8-day
Yep.
break.
Mm-hmm.
When do they lose next? Or when might they lose? Are they going to lose?
Yeah.
It's a great question. So yeah, they're at 10-0 now. Their next 10 games, okay, their win probability on KenPom.com is at least 92-1. It's in the 90s, I think 91%. Except at Washington is a mere 87%. Now, again, if you know probabilities, like, okay, just because it's 90% for any one given game, if you add enough of them up, eventually you'd be predicted to lose 1 or 2 of them. So, does Michigan sweep that West Coast trip, Washington and Oregon? Does an Indiana team or a Nebraska team, pull off an upset at Chrysler? Maybe. But if not, we're looking at Michigan 20-0 going to East Lansing to face a Michigan State team that could be, I mean, they already have the loss, but their record could be pretty darn good too. So yeah, very possible. It's again, I kind of feel like they'll just drop something along the way, but I don't know. After what I saw Saturday, it's very possible Michigan goes into that game 20-0, which would just be, again, program record and pretty wild.
It is. In basketball, like one bad shooting night can kind of doom you. But I think with Michigan, the pace they play and the defense, the way they play defense, it kind of like can mask some of that stuff. So that's what makes them, to me, so dangerous. Like they could have an off shooting night and make up for it elsewhere. And you kind of saw that a little bit on Saturday against Maryland. But man, I don't know. It's a good team. They're fun to watch too. Like they do a lot of things well. It's I don't know. We'll see where things go, but they're really good.
Yeah, I just love diving in. I try not to go too deep in the weeds on these Ken Palm numbers, but they just help illustrate a lot of these things. Number 2 in the country in 2-point shooting, number 1 in 2-point defense. Again, just because of their size at the rim, they're scoring a lot in there, and they're preventing teams from doing that. Their pace, as Aaron mentioned, it's 12th in the country, so only 11 teams playing at a faster pace. Number 1 overall defense, like they're blocking shots, they're sharing the ball in an incredible rate. I mean, let's look. 28 assists on 35 made shots the other night. I mean, so it's not one-on-one ball either. So it's just aesthetically pleasing, winning basketball on both ends of the floor, and it's been really impressive to watch. And now a break for for finals week, and then for the holidays, it's not uncommon to have a little bit of a gap there. Plus, Michigan does squeeze in a non-conference game in the middle of Big Ten play, or towards the end of it. Late February, they play Duke. So like that's another reason why then they don't have to have as many games here earlier in the season, because it has been an interesting schedule with some of these gaps. But so far they haven't let that affect them either.
And yeah, I mean, the next 2 games, we could basically pencil them in as far for Michigan victories. But I'm just curious, do you guys even know the school nicknames for LaSalle and
Well,
McNeese?
I do. Yes, I pride myself in knowing
All right.
almost all of them. But
Yeah, I figured
LaSalle's
you
an
would. Yeah.
interesting one. I'll let Aaron take a guess if he knows either of them.
I don't. I want to say McNeese is like the Cowboys or Marauders or something.
Cowboys, indeed.
Okay. I don't know LaSalle. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, the Explorers, right?
Yep, the LaSalle
The
Explorer.
LaSalle Explorers. Yeah, McNeese is their change came from they were McNeese State for a little while, but then they dropped the state. They're a team that they had gone to the NCAA tournament 2 years in a row under Will Wade, the ultimate cowboy, paying players before it was cool, and they won a game in the NCAA tournament last year, but then he left, so the program has taken a bit of a step back, but that shouldn't crush Michigan in the net rankings. LaSalle may be a little worse than Michigan was hoping for, so that'll drag them down a little bit. But Michigan's still number 1 in those rankings, and in many others, but probably not the AP poll, the one that you see the most often on your ticker in your score app. Arizona held that spot, and previously, and I think they will again later today by the time you hear this podcast, because they played Alabama in Mobile, and they crushed them. So I think they'll hold on to that spot. If you look at the voter breakdown, I like to do that. Aaron, I don't know if you ever did that when you were voting on the football side, but Michigan they were getting the first place votes, but hurt by a handful of voters that weren't putting them in like the top 3. Someone had them 4, 5, 6. I think it was maybe as low as 7 last week. And that dragged them down, as opposed to Arizona that was always in that like top 2 or 3. So I don't know how you're not voting one of those 2 teams at the top, but someone wasn't. And that hurt them a little bit.
People not paying attention. They're not looking at the numbers. Always.
Wild.
The Michigan women rolling as well. I mean, they are 9-1, and outside of a 3-point loss to number 1 UConn, Michigan's average outcome in a game is 95 for them and 51 for the other team. I think 26 points is the closest margin in any of these other games. So, they have been incredible as well. That you mentioned that game against LaSalle coming up for Michigan. It's part for the men. It's part of a doubleheader with the women. They play Oakland, which probably will be a very similar score to what I was just rattling off. So yeah, before they get back into Big Ten, or get back into Big Ten play, they've already got the 1-0 record, having beat Purdue. They start with their West Coast trip right away. December 29th, and then January 1, they're at Oregon and at Washington respectively. So, we'll see what kind of start Michigan can get off to too, because, again, they could be another team that has a really, really good record, into late January, potentially, depending on how that West Coast trip goes. So much drama as there's going on with the football program, the basketball programs, and hockey are kind of, keeping fans happy, at least.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that this women's basketball team could be a legitimate contender in the Big Ten this year. Like, they could actually win the Big Ten. Like, there's been years recently where they've been good and near the top, but like to get to that number 1 level to actually win it, they weren't like the true contender. But this year, it seems like they might have the pieces to actually be finish atop top of the conference.
Yeah, there's basically a free version of Ken Palm, barttorvik.com, and he's got women's, unlike Ken Palm. He's got the projected record as 15-3 in the conference for the Michigan women. He's got UCLA at 16-2. So right now, a little bit behind, but those are the two teams to watch right now. Iowa and USC are good. I think Nebraska's off to a good start, Michigan State, but those are the two teams to watch right now. And Michigan gets them just once at home, the USC and UCLA, that is. So yeah, they're in line. We've talked about on this podcast before. Oh, can they host a game in the NCAA? Get a top 4 seed. They're certainly trending in that direction. They can even go for bigger goals than that potentially. Certainly, they had the Naz Hillman team, but this is like the general talent overall. The balance on this team is really, really impressive. So good things happening on the hardwood for Michigan basketball. All right, well, you can read all about it at MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening.